Once upon a time, in the heart of the eastern part of Nigeria, lived a young woman named Adanna. She was the pride of her parents, brilliant, beautiful, and ambitious. She dreamed of becoming a renowned lawyer, fighting for justice and making her family proud. When the time for her National Youth Service Corps (NYSC) arrived, she was posted to a remote village in the north. Though her mother wept and begged her to redeploy, Adana was determined. Mama, I'll be fine. It's just 1 year, she assured them. Little did she know that 1 year would turn into 5 long, dangerous, clueless years. As Adana arrived the village wearing her neatly pressed NYSC khaki, all eyes were on her. The villagers watched her with curious eyes. She was different and very beautiful. Her skin glowed, her voice was soft yet strong, and her intelligence was unmatched. Among those who noticed her was Malam Sule, a powerful village elder whose gaze lingered a little too long. He was old, pot-bellied, and already had 6 wives. But the moment he saw Adanna, he desired her. This one will be mine, he muttered, as Adanna settled into her new home, unaware of the shadow lurking over her faith. Her story was only just beginning. Adanna's days in the village began with enthusiasm. She taught at the local school, helping children who had never dreamed beyond their tiny village to see the world through books. The students loved her. The village women admired her. But Malam Sule watched her from the shadows. At first, he was subtle. He sent gifts, golden earrings, finely woven fabrics, bags of rice, and millets. Each time, Adana politely refused. I cannot accept this, Malam Sule, but thank you, she would say, her smile warm but firm. But her rejection only fueled his obsession. She is proud. He spat to his friends, but no woman has ever denied me. Determined to have her, he tried a different approach. One day, he cornered her on the way home from school. Adana, my jewel, he said, his voice thick with persuasion. Why do you reject my kindness? A woman like you should be honored to be the wife of a man of wealth like Malam Sule. Adana stiffened. I am not interested in marriage, Malam Sule, she said firmly. I have dreams. His smile tightened. Dreams? He scoffed. A woman's dream is her husband's house. One day you will see. As she walked away, a dark resolve settled in his heart. If she would not come to him willingly, then he would make her come by force. Malam Sule could not sleep. His desire for Adana burned hotter than the desert sun. He needed her. He had to make her his by any means necessary. So he sought the help of an ancient herbalist, hidden deep within the village outskirts. The herbalist, a man with cloudy eyes and a voice like rustling leaves, listened carefully as Malam Sule spoke. She resists me, but I want her. I want her to love me with all her soul. The old man smiled, revealing brown, decayed teeth. He reached into a dusty gourd and pulled out a tiny bag filled with a powder. This is a powerful charm, the herbalist whispered. Mix it with her food, and she will crave you like the air she breathes. That evening, Malam Sule set his plan in motion. He bought suya, hot and fragrant, from the best seller in the village. Before delivering it to Adana, he sprinkled the cursed powder over the meat. Then with a charming smile, he approached her. Adana, he said softly, I know you have had a long day. Please accept this suya as a token of peace. Adana hesitated, but the aroma was irresistible. She took a bite, and just like that, her fate was sealed. That night, something changed. Adana tossed and turned in her sleep. Visions of Malam Sule filled her mind. His voice echoed in her ears, whispering sweet words. When the morning sun rose, she woke up with an overwhelming desire burning in her chest. Suddenly, Malam Sule was all she could think about. She found herself daydreaming about him. his wrinkled face, his large belly, his commanding voice. When she couldn't control or resist her feelings anymore, she ran straight to Malam Sule's house, falling to her knees. She grabbed his hands. Please marry me. I cannot live without you. Malam Sule smiled in triumph. The village was in shock. Did you hear? The copper begged Malam Sule to marry her. Ah, it's not normal, oh. What happened to her? But Adana did not care. She only had eyes for Malam Sule. And so the preparations for the wedding began. Back in Adana's hometown in the east, her family was overjoyed to hear from her until they heard what she had to say. Papa, Mama, I have found the man I want to marry. Her father's heart stopped for a moment. Who is he? His name is Malam Sule. He's kind, wise, and he has asked for my hand in marriage. There was silence. Then her mother screamed, A married man with 6 wives? Adana, have you lost your mind? If you do not allow me to marry him, Adana threatened, I will end my life. Her parents' hearts shattered. With tears in his eyes, her father reluctantly agreed, releasing his daughter to a future he could not understand. And just like that, Adana was gone. The moment Adana stepped into Malam Sule's house, he spoke. Your name is no longer Adana. From today, you are Hawa. Yes, my love, she whispered. You will wear the hijab always. No man will ever gaze upon you except me. She obeyed, and so the lawyer Adana was gone. Hawa was born. She gave up her dreams, her past, her name, her family. She became Hawa, the 7th wife of Malam Sule. Days turned to months, months turned to years. Hawa became a shadow of herself. She had 4 children, but she felt nothing. She forgot what happiness felt like. But fate was not done with her yet, because one day a visitor arrived in the village. Pastor Ken had come to the village on a missionary journey. He was holding a crusade, one that would change everything. As he walked through the markets, his eyes fell upon a woman. Something about her seemed familiar, and then his heart stopped. Adana. She turned, but her eyes were lifeless. I don't know you. But Pastor Ken did know her, and he would not give up. That evening, Pastor Ken sat in his small lodging in the village, his heart heavy with sorrow. When he saw Adana, no, Hawa, earlier that day, his spirit stirred with unease. She had changed. The bright, ambitious young woman he had once known from his campus ministry days was now a lifeless shadow. What happened to her? He murmured to himself. That evening, before heading to the crusade, he made one final attempt. He found her house and stood at the entrance. Hawa, he called out, his voice strong. Come to the crusade tonight. There is a miracle waiting for you. She didn't respond. She just stared. A deep, unsettling silence followed. He sighed and left, but in his heart he prayed, God, if there is still hope for her, let her come tonight. Let her find her way to you. And then he went to the crusade and waited. Hawa sat in her room staring at the mirror. Something inside her was unsettled. A voice whispered in her ears, Do not go. But then another voice, softer yet strong, echoed in her heart. Go, Adana. Go and remember. Her head pounded. She felt restless, as though something was pulling her apart. Her feet moved on their own. Before she could understand what was happening, she found herself walking towards the church. The crusade was in full force. The villagers danced, clapped, and lifted their hands in worship. Pastor Ken stood on the altar, his eyes scanning the crowd. He had almost lost hope, and then he saw her. She stood at the back, hesitant, trembling. Jesus, she came. He lifted the microphone, his voice booming through the speakers. Sister, you are welcome. God has been waiting for you. Hawa's breath caught in her throat. Something overwhelming swept through her body. She collapsed to the ground and suddenly she screamed, "Let me go!" The entire congregation froze. Hawa twisted and turned on the ground. "Let me go!" she shrieked again. Pastor Ken rushed forward. "Adanna, you are free in Jesus' name. Be free in the mighty name of Jesus." It was as if scales fell from her eyes. She blinked. She looked around. And then she remembered everything. The cursed suya, the bewitchment, the lost years. Tears streamed down her face as she wailed in horror. And suddenly she remembered. The spell had broken. Hawa, no, Adanna, felt like a stranger in her own body. She turned to Pastor Ken, her voice shaking. "Where am I? What happened to me?" He held her hands. "You were deceived, but now you are free." She looked at herself, at her hijab, her worn hands, her thin frame. "How long has it been?" Pastor Ken hesitated. 5 years. She gasped. "No, no, no, no." She screamed in grief. Adanna refused to go back to Malam Sule's house. "Take me home, Pastor. I want to go back to my parents. I want to go back to my parents. I don't want to go back to any Malam Sule's house." But then, 4 small children ran towards her as she found her way to Malam Sule's house. "Mama, Mama." She stared at them. Who are they?" Pastor Ken's heart ached. "They are your children, Adanna." Her stomach twisted in horror. She didn't remember them, but they knew her. Tears streamed down her face. "No, no, this is not my life. This cannot be my life." That night, Adanna returned to Malam Sule's house, not as his wife, but as a woman who had regained her mind. She stormed inside, rage burning in her chest. Malam Sule sat on his throne-like chair drinking tea. When he saw her, his cup shattered in his hands. He knew the spell was broken. She marched up to him, and he stepped outside. She ripped off her hijab and spat on the floor. "You destroyed my life." For the first time ever, Malam Sule had no words. "Take me home, Pastor Ken, now." Adanna didn't want money. She didn't want revenge. She just wanted to be free. She just wanted the life she knew back. Pastor Ken nodded. But first, there was one last thing to do. Adanna and Pastor Ken traveled back to her village. Her father wept when he saw her. "My daughter, oh my daughter." She fell into his arms. Then she said the words that changed everything. "Papa, return his bride price. I want nothing from that man." And so, in front of the village elders, her father took back the money. The bond was broken. Adanna was free. Months passed. Adanna had to heal. She was still a mother. But now, she had a choice. She could either remain bound by her past or fight for her future. And so, she chose to start over. She enrolled in law school again. She reclaimed her name, her faith, her destiny, and she never looked back. Years later, Adanna stood in a courtroom, strong, powerful, unbreakable. She had become the lawyer she has always wanted to be, the lawyer she was meant to be. One day, she heard a familiar voice behind her at the court. "Sister Adanna." She turned. It was Pastor Ken. He smiled. "You made it." She smiled back. "Yes, I did." And for the first time in a long time, she reminisced, thinking back where she came from, with happiness and joy. and a sense of fulfillment. She looked up into the sky with gratitude and thanked God for how far she has come. Shortly after, Adanna was celebrated in her hometown when she returned to her father, a fulfilled lawyer who is practicing all around the world, winning cases and making a name for herself as a law practitioner. Her father was so proud of her. He celebrated her with joy and gladness. And such a welcome party it was that was thrown in her favor and in her honor. And just like that, Adana picked up her life. And like the phoenix, she rose, never to fall again.